Hello, Frothy Friday viewers, listeners, indulgers. Yeah, I've got a bit of a tale to tell, as usually. Oh, shit. I should really restart, considering two odd fuck-ups with the mouthy sounds straight off the bat. But hey, let's see if I can pick it up and find some flow somewhere. So as I sat the other morning, listening in on a frothy conversation with people across the world on the mythical etymology, don't lose me here, of the word tra. T-R-A. It's not actually a word. It's part of a word. And tra meaning to cross. So you see like travel, traverse, transform, even mantra. So as I was sort of listening into this conversation, wasn't partaking because I had a tooth out. And so I've had a swollen face for most of the week. That's fun. There's still stitches in there. Cold food, which means you can have ice cream at lunchtime without getting in trouble. It's pretty sweet. And so I was listening to Tra, and something sort of dropped in pretty hard because we were talking about trains and traveling from one place to another. And that when people originally started taking trains back in the day, probably should have looked that up, had some sweet stats to drop in about when trains came about. Combustion engines era, round about that kind of part of that revolution. Someone will, I'm sure, sweep in and let me know. Yeah. And so when people would go on trains, it would kind of be like, I left out one of the most important trials, trance, which I would call flow states, but you might think of trance as in like when people get like entrained and seems like they're on a different plane of consciousness. They're traveling. And so people are on trains. And what's it like being on a train? They'd say that it was like you were sitting on a cloud and cruising along the countryside. And so you were like in two worlds almost, sort of like a mythical space of travel. And you would get on at one spot and then you would end up in another. So you traveled, you traversed. And it was kind of like magic, I guess. And I was thinking about this train I used to catch all the time because I used to live on the Central Coast in New South Wales. I used to catch this train to Sydney going south or going north to Newcastle. And more so Sydney to the Central Coast in my early 20s. Doesn't make sense, but hey, when in my later years of traveling the train, my early 20s, I would catch this train and I would drop into this trance state. Not like a heavy one, but one where I would be like, wow, I'm getting some super creative thoughts here. To the point where I thought, and I used to call this the train of death. So did a lot of people because of the wild humans that were on the train. And the train of death is actually in reference to going from Sydney to Newcastle, which I've done several times. It's about 3 and a bit hours with all those folks. Got plenty of tales from late night trains, actually. I've probably been those folks too, so I'm not dissing anyone. So anyway, there's this like creative resonance that exists when you're on a train, because it's like boom, 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 whatever like beautiful sounds your train's making. And I think it's older trains as well. The older sort of old school trains on the wooden train tracks and stuff, they have the coolest sounds. Because I think the more modern trains don't really give me that effect. Like I've been on the train to Brizzy a couple of times and I'm not really getting that frothy, like creative flow. I was actually speaking to a comedian, Central Coast comedian on my podcast, Mitch Garling, and we were talking about that thing, but it didn't really it didn't drop in. And then I realized, yeah, it's kind of like you are floating through, especially on that train, because you're floating through the mountains and through tunnels, and you're up on sort of the mountain sides, and you can see down into the water. And spectacularly, I just went, whoa, when you have that like penny drop, someone's telling you all about this stuff, and it really, you have to have a lived, felt sense of that experience for you to go, that was that. Okay. I can ground all this tra in. And we continue to yarn about tra. And I, towards the end of the call, we all jumped in and did a and I thought it was going to be a tra. I thought we were going to chant tra. I got frothy for that. And I was thinking, like, you could hear people, armies going into battle, tra. It sounds like onomatopoeically, if that's a word, when you're walking. It sounds like boots on the ground on a rainy, sort of muddy day. Anyway, we did our oms and jumped off, and I went and jumped in the shower, and we got this beautiful shower where we can look out into the treetops where we live. Kind of like that. There you go. There's your felt sense of my story. And I started to do some chanting. I'm not really a chanter. I've done a few singing meditation things. They're pretty wild, actually. Something I'm going to explore more. And I started tra. And at the time, my partner Jackie was making us a cacao and medicinal mushroom mix with coffee in it. And I used to do that all the time, and I felt a little bit bad about having ceremonial cacao and putting all this, but whatever. So we had this mix with herbs, and it was beautiful. And then it was raining, and I was sitting over there, and I was looking out there, and drinking while talking Jackie through this experience of this, which was an experience. So like when I was listening in on the conversation, frothy conversations, where I have affinities with podcasts and collaborative hangs where you get to have conversations with legends who are talking about stuff that entrainment drops you into a collective trance state together, which is even more powerful. And so I got to relay that message to Jackie. And then as I was sitting there, I ate a date. And then I finished my drink. It was awesome. I had to make it cold though, because I'm not allowed to have hot stuff because I've got stitches. But anyway, apart from that, still awesome. And I found myself in a trance state, and I was doing this weird. It's kind of like if you've ever found yourself in those like extended trance states where your eyes can get locked on something, and my eyes got locked in this part of the forest, and it was just, and the forest just started going, not unlike a train. It was like, but I was hooked, and I kind of stopped talking to Jackie. I was fully aware of it. It was very similar to kind of like a mushroom trip when you, or maybe acid, when you kind of like, you're aware that you're on a different plane for a while, and you see everything going on, but you're just like, no, I'm here doing this. Jackie just went about her morning. And so it was probably about 5 minutes, but you never know with those things because it's this time dilation. And I was really fascinated by the whole experience. And whenever I have these type of experiences, it tends to be after good frothy conversations. And whether it's listening into them, but more powerfully if I'm involved, and then being able to go and share the knowledge. Now I'm sharing it with you. It's just a really fascinating stack for me to have gone, okay, what's going on here after I came out of the trance state. And actually, like, transitionally back into my work, it was kind of like I worked all morning from 5:30, and then I had the froth conversation. And then I had the, ceremonial drink, and I had the shower and the cleanse, and you going through different transitions in my day. And then I had what you might call a sort of semi-mystical experience, if not full blown. And yeah, it was cool. That was super frothy. And it kind of allowed me to sort of think about, like, I ran a survey with the people within my tokens community. I chucked it on my Facebook page as well, but what are they most interested in? And I wrote this, just random line, which was, don't worry, be frothy. How to access more froth or something and find more frothers in your life. And that overwhelmingly was the one that people want to play with. So, and to my excitement, because that's actually these play shop things that I've been creating are like, how do we come together and explore different things, like these conversations or etymology of words, or go on adventures back into our childhoods, or explore or take the microscope onto stuff like how we interact with our technologies, etc., and come up with playful ways to find the frothy edges of our potential. Yeah. So finding the frothy edges is kind of the mission that keeps coming back to me. It's like, how do we find those frothy edges? Because at those frothy edges, or as my friends Maddie and Sarah would say, the boundaries, so people who are riding the boundaries, because when it comes to and when it comes to the traverse, Josh Shrieg says that you're on both sides of the door at the same time. And so the boundary, when you're in the boundary, or when you're playing on the boundary, or when you're playing on the frothy edge, if you think about coffee when it's just frothing over, or a beer and you're like, fuck, don't go over the edge, oh shit, and then it somehow hangs on, that's where this, like, the radness lives. And the boundary riders are the ones riding the boundaries, and they've kind of got one foot inside whatever they're doing, and then one foot in the unknown and going, fuck, okay, what radness is going to occur? What does my friend Jessica say? 1 foot in the mundane, 1 foot in the mystical? Something like that, but that's the kind of sentiment. So that space on the frothy edge of your beer is where I want to play. And it's ironic that there's, that maps onto beers, maps onto coffees, is which is my favorite place to have a frothy conversation with someone. It's having a delicious coffee. Yeah. So look out for more of that. Calling it the Froth Academy as well, because why not? I think that was where I kind of wanted to leave it. And then there's a song that, let's round it out with a song, because that's awesome, by Alt J, called Fitz Pleasure. You probably heard it. It was massive about 10 years ago. And it goes, tra, la, 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 tra, tra, la, 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 And I looked it up, and I was like, how you go, oh, I'm looking for patterns. This is going to be about traversing. And maybe it is in some way, shape, or form, but it's actually a really kind of brutal scene within a novel that they had an affinity with when they read it. And I'm not going to explain it completely, but it's quite a brutal scene. And then you listen to the bass line of that, you go, oh, now I kind of understand where this song's come from. And isn't it interesting that you will spend 10 years listening to a song thinking one thing, which I was thinking it was about some form of relationship with a partner and et cetera, and it's a completely different thing now, but an amazing song. Another conversation I had was about having too many tabs open in your mind when you talk, with one of my co-creators of Radness, Kim Serafini, and I definitely have too many tabs open. That's why you probably just got that little weird thing that maybe only sounds connected in my brain. Anywho, that sounds like a good place to cut it off here for Friday, and I hope you have a frothy time. If you want to come and hang out at the Froth Academy, fuck knows what that looks like just yet, but I'm sure it'll be frothy, and that's my missing tooth now at the back. Lucky it's not one at the front. Much love. Yoo-hoo!